5 spine-chilling true stories of haunted homes. Discover the sinister secrets within. Sarah stepped into her new house in Oakwood, the promise of a fresh start clinging to the air like the scent of fresh paint. With her 2 daughters, Emma and Lily, by her side, she believed she could finally leave the past behind. Every corner of this quaint home, covered in quiet shadows, felt like safety until darkness fell. That first night, as the trees swayed and leaves whispered secrets, a chill crawled down her spine. The previously perfect neighborhood morphed into something sinister. It started small. At first, it was just a whisper through the walls, a mere echo that sent her heart racing. Sarah told herself it was the wind, a figment of her anxiety. But as night deepened, a faint tapping began. It echoed through the silent halls, a soft, rhythmic sound. Instinctively, she glanced over at her girls. They slept soundly, blissfully unaware. The irony gnawed at her. This was supposed to be a haven. It hadn't taken long for the shadows to creep in and mar the tranquility. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, and still, Sarah fought against her instincts. She kept busy, reassuring Emma and Lily that all was well. But isolation nestled in her heart like a cold stone, tangled with memories she'd thought buried. One night, as a storm roared outside, Sarah could no longer ignore the whispers. Her hand trembled over the light switch when she finally ventured into the basement, her heart pounding like a prisoner wanting freedom. What she discovered sparked panic. Hidden behind a false wall in the crawl space were photos of a family that had lived there long before her arrival. Their joy haunted her. Among them, a flyer showed 2 missing children, faces frozen in time, pleading silently from the depths of a past that wouldn't die. Suddenly, everything felt suffocating, as if the house itself was alive, watching her. She stumbled back, breathless, her heart pounding as the walls seemed to close in. Desperate for answers, Sarah befriended Mr. Wright, their neighbor, who exhibited an unsettling charm that felt like a mask hiding something darker. His stories about the house were laced with foreboding. She tried to ignore the shivers that ran down her spine as he spoke, especially when he gestured suspiciously toward the trees that encased their homes in a protective veil or perhaps a suffocating grip. The more Sarah learned about her new home, the more her daughters began to suffer. They shivered with unexplained fevers, their laughter silenced by shadowy presences that seemed to invade their space. And then the whispers became taunts, creeping into her thoughts. Leave before it's too late. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just when hope flickered from the edge of despair, she decided to seek help from local officers, a call for help that dissolved into dismissive laughter and dismissive attitudes. Just an overworked mother, they shrugged, and Sarah was left grasping at the emptiness of their words. Each rejection fortified her fear. The very pit she'd escaped now housed the darkness lingering in the hearts of those who were supposed to stand guard. As the hauntings grew bolder, shadows danced across the walls, mocking her attempts to feel secure. With each passing moment, she felt the claws of dread tightening around her throat. And with each pulse of her heart, the chilling truth became undeniable. Sometimes, monsters don't lurk in the darkness. They live next door. As she reached for her phone to call for help again, that chilling whisper returned, slithering through the air. Sarah. Echoing from the crawl space with a promise of horrors she could never have anticipated. What awaited her beyond the dim light? The air grew colder as Sarah hesitated in the darkened hallway, heart racing. She could barely make out Emma and Lily's sleeping forms in the dim light. The whisper echoed again, a siren's call pulling her closer to the crawl space. Sarah, with shaking hands, she flicked on her phone's flashlight and took hesitant steps forward. The beam of light sliced through the darkness, illuminating the walls festooned with peeling wallpaper and twisted shadows. The whisper was fainter now, retreating into the bowels of the house. She felt drawn to it, each step heavy with dread. "Mom." Emma's voice broke the tension, small and innocent, pulling Sarah back momentarily. "What are you doing?" "Just checking on things, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." The words felt hollow as they slipped from her lips. Swallowing her fear, Sarah crouched before the crawl space entrance. With a deep breath, she pushed against the false wall. It creaked as it swung open, revealing darkened depths that reeked of mildew and secrets. Shadows lurked just beyond the light, but she couldn't turn back now. The whisper materialized again, clearer this time, taunting her. "Help us. Who are you?" She blurted into the darkness, her voice thin and trembling. Silence. The whispering stilled, but the air felt heavier, saturated with anticipation. As she ventured farther, the shadows coalesced into shapes that flickered out of her reach. She stumbled, her foot knocking against something hard on the floor. A box. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the lid, finding it filled with keepsakes, crumpled letters, a faded blanket, and twisted photographs. Faces appeared, spectral smiles juxtaposed against hollow eyes. The same children from the missing flyer. At that moment, a bright crack of thunder jolted her, and she dropped the box. One photograph fluttered free, dancing in the air as if caught in the breeze that didn't exist. Then she felt a sudden, sharp coldness behind her. A presence. Goosebumps erupted across her arms. "Get out!" the whisper returned, louder and more insistent. Panic surged through her veins. "Mom!" Lily's voice echoed, sharp and piercing. "Mom, please. I'm scared." Sarah whipped around. Their faces stared back at her, pale and terrified. She had abandoned them. The horrors that followed her were now threatening her children. "Emma! Lily! Stay close!" She rushed out of the crawl space, her breath quickening as she ushered them away from the growing shadows. The tapping drummed more forcefully now, as if the walls themselves began to breathe around them. "What's wrong?" Emma asked, wide eyes glistening with fear. "I don't know," Sarah confessed, glancing back at the darkened entry. Shadows slipped and slithered closer, tendrils of darkness that seemed alive, eager, desperate. In a sudden fit of panic, she grabbed her daughters, leading them back into the safety of the main living room. But just as she closed the door, the tapping transformed into banging, fists against wood, demanding entrance. "Mom, please make it stop." Lily cried as tears flowed down her cheeks and Emma clutched her arm tightly. "What is it? What does it want?" Sarah's voice cracked as she sank to the floor, cradling them both. The walls vibrated with a chilling echo, help us, help us." There was no escape from what they had stumbled into. But as the shadows intensified, Sarah felt a new, alarming presence mingling among them, a warmth that felt too familiar. Looking up, she saw Mr. Wright's figure beside her window, illuminated by the sickly glow of the outside streetlight. He grinned, but his eyes were devoid of understanding, glinting with a sinister hunger. "What do you want?" she shouted, but he only tilted his head, brushing a hand against the glass. "Your home is my home now, and you've brought them to me." Terror gripped Sarah. What had she done? As the whispered pleas morphed into an eerie chant, a chilling realization settled in. They weren't just lost children haunting the house, they were part of something far worse. And behind Mr. Wright, the darkness began to thrum with life. What would it take to make them all leave? The chill deepened. The shadows inched closer. Fingers trembling, Sarah grabbed the girls and whispered, "We need to go. Now." But even as they moved, the glimmers of hope seeped away, leaving only unyielding shadows in their wake. Outside, the trees rustled ominously. A nightmarish choice loomed. What lay ahead was uncertain. Would they escape, or would the house claim them too? The pounding on the door intensified. Each thud seemed to resonate deep within Sarah's chest, sinking with her racing heart. She looked at Emma and Lily, their small faces etched with fear, and felt that same panic clawing at her throat. "Is it him?" Emma whispered, glancing over her shoulder. I don't know, Sarah replied, shaking. But we can't let him in. The shadows shifted, crawling across the walls like living things. Every heartbeat echoed in the silence that followed, stretching and pulling tight. The walls seemed to close in, the air feeling heavier, bearing down on them. Mom, Lily whimpered, clutching her sister's arm. What is happening? Stay with me, Sarah instructed. In that moment it was a fragile thread they held onto, this small circle of love in a vast, dark sea of threats. The thumping stopped suddenly, plunging them into an oppressive stillness. Sarah dared to breathe, holding her precious girls close. The faintest of whispers broke the silence, brushing against her ear like a forgotten nightmare resurfacing. Help us. Terrified, she glanced towards the darkened corner of the room. A question fled before she could catch it. Were those shadows changing shape? Did they look like faces? Mom! Please don't leave us. Emma cried out, her voice shaking. I won tea, Sarah promised, fear scraping through her. I promise. She wanted to believe that promise. But a gnawing doubt wormed its way in. Stay where you are. A voice barked suddenly from behind the door. It was Mr. Wright, and this time he sounded angry. You can't hide from me. The weight of the fear pressing down on them was suffocating. As if to test her resolve, the door rattled violently. Before she could think, Sarah led her daughters to the kitchen. The darkness behind them whispered words that tangled with her thoughts. She shoved the kitchen table against the door just as it flew open, but not before a gust of cold air poured into the room, sweeping across her legs. Mom! Lily squealed, her eyes wide with terror. Shoo! Sarah hissed, holding a finger to her lips. They crouched low behind the table, hearts pounding like war drums. Something shifted in the shadows. The indistinct shapes morphed into figures. Echoes of laughter, chilling and childlike, danced through the air. Sarah's stomach churned. This was not the laughter of innocent children, it had a cruel edge, mocking and twisted. Then, there was again the feeling of warmth, creeping in from the edges of her vision. Hadn't she felt it before, a comforting reminder that turned bitter and sharp. Mom, it's the kids, isn't it? Emma murmured, as the shadows grew denser. What do they want? Lily whimpered. As if responding to her daughter's question, a collective moan drifted through the room, fluid yet haunting. The girls shivered, drawing closer to Sarah as she gritted her teeth against it all. This wasn't just about her anymore. From the dimness, Mr. Wright emerged, his figure backlit by different shades of darkness. He looked different somehow, more solid, more menacing. You're fighting a losing battle, Sarah. They want you. No. Sarah shouted, pushing the girls closer behind the table. You can't have them. He smiled, a grotesque display revealing too many teeth. Oh, but you're too late. The moment you stepped into this house, it was already chosen. Panic clawed at Sarah's insides as she pulled the girls tightly together. In that instant, she felt the urge to fight flood through her veins. We're leaving. We're taking our lives back. As those words clipped from her tongue, the shadows pulsed, shifting and swirling with intensity, the whispers rising to a fever pitch. The house itself felt alive, angry that she dared to defy it. With trembling hands, Sarah grabbed the kitchen knife from the counter and held it tightly. Let us go. She led Emma and Lily toward the back door, but the air was thickening, becoming a tangible force pushing against them, attempting to hold them back. Just as they reached the door, a wall of darkness surged forward, engulfing everything in an icy grip. Mom! Lily cried in desperation. For a flickering moment, Sarah felt rooted, caught between two worlds, the terror of the creeping darkness and the fierce light of love from her daughters beside her. Help us, the whispers moaned again, echoing with promise and dread. One last push, one last act of defiance, and the door burst open into the chaotic night. Would it lead to freedom, or plunge them deeper into nightmares? All at once, the shadows lunged forth, and she and her girls were swept into a nightmare torn between the living and the dead. What waited outside was a choice she never anticipated, a path shrouded in darkness where hope seemed lost. Would they find safety in the night, or would the house consume them whole? The night air hit them like a sudden chill, a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness of the house. As they stumbled outside, the shadows chased them, clawing at their heels with sinister whispers of help us echoing around them. Sarah's heart raced, a wild drum beat that pushed her legs forward. "Run!" she urged, her voice sharp with urgency. Emma and Lily followed, their tiny hands grasping at her skirt, fear propelling them through the oppressive murk. The yard was barren, a wasteland of dead grass and twisted, gnarled trees reaching out like skeletal fingers. The moon, hidden behind thick clouds, provided only glimpses of light, casting eerie shadows that stretched and warped with every movement. "What are they?" Lily gasped between sobs. "I don't know." Sarah panted, her breath coming out in desperate gasps. But even as she ran, part of her felt it, the truth wrapped in those chilling phrases. Were the kids in danger, or were they the danger? Behind them, the door slammed shut with a bone-rattling echo, the sound splitting the stillness like glass shattering. "You can't escape." Mr. Wright's booming voice called from within, tinged with laughter that made Sarah's skin crawl. The ground felt unforgiving beneath their feet, roots and rocks threatening to trip them. The shadows didn't stop. They loomed, threatening to envelop them as they reached the end of the property line. The girls stumbled, and Sarah felt their weight pulling her down. "Look!" Emma shouted, pointing. There, just past the edge of the yard, stood an old barn. The structure slouched, half collapsed, but it was a shelter, an escape from the overwhelming darkness that lurked behind them. "Inside!" Sarah commanded, urgency slicing through their despair. They darted toward the barn, a breath of hope sparking in her chest. Maybe they could find something useful inside. Maybe there was an answer. As they reached the barn door, Sarah glanced back at the house. The windows glowed with a faint flicker of light, a beacon of something sinister, something alive. The hair on the back of her neck stood on end as shadows flickered around the windows, quick and unsettling. "Mom, please." Lily's voice was a fragile thread. "Just a bit further." Sarah pushed the door open, the old wood creaking ominously as if it carried an age-old secret. She rushed her daughters inside, the musty smell choking her but offering a strangely comforting sense of concealment. The interior was dark, littered with dust-covered tools and broken furniture. Moonlight barely penetrated through the cracks, creating a patchwork of light and shadow on the floor. They huddled in a corner, heartbeats racing, waiting for the darkness to catch up. In the silence, a faint sound broke through the soft patter of something against the worn wooden floor, like tiny feet scurrying closer. Sarah held her breath, her grip tightening around the knife in her hand. "What was that?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "I don't know." But fear clawed at Sarah, feeding the dread that whispered that they weren't alone. Then they heard it again, a giggle, so innocent yet deeply unsettling. It echoed through the barn, bouncing off the walls, twisting into something sinister. It felt like they were surrounded. "Mom!" Lily clutched her tightly, eyes darting around. Shadows shifted near the barn door, flickering as if eager to converge on them. "Stay close," Sarah commanded, but the words felt weak against the bone-chilling giggle that filled the air. Just outside the barn, figures began to form from the trickling shadows. She could see them now, tiny, distorted forms, their smiles too wide, too hungry. The flickering moonlight revealed their faces for only a heartbeat, hollow eyes devoid of light, grinning in sinister delight. "Help us," they sang, their voices sweet yet grotesque, a chorus of sadistic innocence. Trapped between the encroaching shadows and those haunting voices, Sarah realized they had to confront this. As fear gripped her, she raised the knife high, ready to protect her daughters. "Get back!" she shouted, voice cracking with desperation. But the shadows didn't waver. They edged closer, each step bringing a chill that seeped into her very bones. Sarah felt the desperate weight of their pleas tugging at her heart, warping her sense of right and wrong. Trapped in a web of darkness, Sarah was left wondering, would they truly help, or would they pull her in deeper? A surge of cold wind flooded the barn, and in that moment, she knew there was no going back. What fate awaited them now, entangled in a dance with the very shadows they wished to escape? Cold sweat dripped down Sarah's spine as the figures closed in. She could hardly see their shapes through the thin line of moonlight, but their smiles were unmistakable, mocking and grotesque, a twisted parody of innocence. "Mom!" Lily whimpered, her voice cracking as she clutched tighter to Sarah's side. The shadows around them seemed to pulse, pressing in, demanding attention, begging for acknowledgement. As if speaking their names would somehow grant them power over the living. "Just hold on. We're not leaving this barn," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible above the growing chorus of whispers. She could feel the knife slipping in her grip, her hands trembling as dread corroded her courage. The barn creaked ominously, old wood groaning like a sobering reminder of how fragile their refuge was. She turned her attention back to the figures, the distorted forms now clearer. They were children, just like her daughter's small, tattered clothes hanging off frail bodies. But there was something deeply wrong with the way they moved, their heads cocked up in unnaturally sharp angles. The shadows wrapped like snakes around them, twisting and pulling the darkness close. "Help us," they cooed again, stretching their hands toward the girls, visages warped by need and malice. This wasn't the sweet plea of lost souls. It was an invitation, an insidious beckoning that yanked at the boundaries of Sarah's sanity. A sharp clang shattered the eerie melody, ripping through the stillness like thunder. Emma had knocked over an old metal bucket, its loud crash cutting through the thick air as it rolled across the floor. "Stay back!" Sarah shouted, her voice rising in panic. She stepped forward, knife outstretched, the blade glinting like a fragile silver star against the shadows. Her heart raced as she realized she was ready to fight not just for herself but for her daughters. The children's faces shifted, twisted in surprise at the disruption. Their giggles turned to hisses, a cacophony of frustration. "You can't keep hiding, Sarah." One of them sneered, voice slithering through the air like smoke. "Join us. We just want to play, Mom." Lily wailed, her face a mask of terror. "I don't want to play." The innocence in her voice cut deeper than any blade could. "It's not a game." Sarah shouted, desperation clawing at her. She felt backed into a wall, surrounded by malevolent spirits who wore the faces of children, stripping away her will to protect. The shadows tightened their grip, and Sarah could feel the air growing thick around them, cold and suffocating. They were growing restless, their laughter echoing louder, transforming into a menacing symphony of malice. "Why do you resist?" A haunting voice broke through the laughter. Darker than the night around them, it wrapped itself around Sarah's mind, weighing heavily on her thoughts. "Help us and you can be free." "No!" Sarah cried, clutching her daughters, their fear igniting her rage. The knife felt like an extension of her will, and she knew she had to push back against the tide of darkness. She took a step forward, heart pounding. "You're not getting them." Then, a sudden crack of thunder roared outside, shaking the barn as explosions of light flashed through the gaps in the wood. Just long enough for shadows to scatter, revealing a hidden door behind stacks of old crates. It was ajar, a sliver of hope or a portal to darker truths she couldn't tell. "Go!" Sarah urged. "We need to move." But the figures tightened again, their whispered entreaties growing louder, tinged with urgent desperation. "Don't leave us. Stay with us. Mom, please." Emma shouted, eyes wild, pleading, what was waiting behind that door? With the specters circling, their laughter an echo of madness, Sarah's mind raced frantically. Did she have a choice? Or was the darkness already gnawing at the edges of their resolve? "Run!" The command erupted from deep within her, a primal scream tearing through the cacophony. Would they flee into the unknown or succumb to the wretched fate that awaited? As they fled towards that open door, the knife clattering. From Sarah's grasp, a chilling breeze carried the whispers, and Sarah felt the shadows reaching out, begging. What awaited them past the threshold? Would it be salvation or doom? The moment they crossed the threshold, a heavy weight lifted, but it was quickly replaced by an intense chill that ran down Sarah's spine. The door slammed shut behind them, the sound echoing like a cannon blast, leaving only the darkness to envelop them. Is this the right place? Emma's voice trembled in the gloom, her hands gripping Lily's small fingers like they were a lifeline. I don't know, Sarah stammered, her heart racing. Just stay close. The narrow corridor stretched ahead, barely illuminated by a flicker of dying bulbs overhead, casting more shadow than light. The air tasted stale and cold, ancient like the barn that had served as their last refuge. A muffled thumping began to pulse in the distance, rhythmic and eerily human, raising goosebumps on Sarah's skin. What was that? Lily whispered, her breath visible in the frigid air. I don't know, Sarah replied, straining to hear past the drumbeat. It felt like a warning, a heartbeat of something lurking just out of sight. Maybe we should go back, Emma suggested, hesitating at the edge of the darkness. Back? Are you crazy? That's where they are. Sarah snapped, pushing them forward. The children had been cursed spirits, twisted remnants of innocence pulling them into the grip of despair. No, she had to keep moving. Fear clawed at her determination. They moved cautiously down the corridor, the thumping growing clearer, until it morphed into whispers. There's nowhere to run, a chorus echoed from the walls, chilling her to the bone. No escape, join us, Mom. Lily squeezed her hand, eyes wide with terror. They're coming. Sarah swallowed hard, forcing herself to look back, peering into the dark. Shadows flickered against the walls, writhing and swirling. The children's figures emerged, their faces still distorted but now more defined, as if the darkness was shaping them into something terrible. No! Sarah yelled, but doubt crept in, cutting into her resolve. What if running only drew them closer? In the suffocating silence, a thought flickered in her mind. What if there was no way out? Suddenly, the shadows lunged forward, merging together like dark water, forming gnarled hands that stretched greedily toward the girls. The terrible laughter crescendoed, drowning out every thought. Run! Run to the end! The voice broke through like glass shattering in Sarah's head. She spun around and burst forward, pulling her daughters with her. We can't stop! She screamed, her heart pounding in sync with the rhythm of the whispers, the shadows gaining ground behind them. They raced deeper into the unknown, the corridor twisting and turning, the air thickening until it felt like they were moving through molasses. Just ahead, they spotted a faint light, a promise of safety or another trap. Mom! What if it's a trick? Emma shouted, panting. It's better than staying here. Sarah pulled them along, adrenaline blurring her vision. With each step, the thumping grew louder, pounding in her ears, filling her with dread. Trust me. We have to go now. As they drew closer, the light flickered, revealing a small room ahead, cluttered with old furniture covered in dust. Panic surged within her. Would there be a way out? But just as they reached the threshold, a shriek filled the air, sharp and piercing, causing Sarah to freeze. The whispers morphed from threats into cries for help, echoing around them, wrapping every corner of the darkened space. Help us, we don't want to be alone, not again. Sarah yelled, pushing through the door and into the small room. The heavy oak swung shut just as the shadows collided with the frame it held for a breath, then buckled under the pressure. She turned to face the room. Inside, dozens of eyes glowing, pleading watched them from the corners. You shouldn't have come here. The walls pulsed as if the shadows were alive, closing in, their reach expanding. The voices escalated into a wailing chorus, desperate and chilling. Faced with the realization that the door had sealed them into a nightmare, Sarah's instinct screamed to find a way out. There was no turning back. With terror spiraling through her, she scanned the room. A way to escape or a dark promise waited, ready to ensnare them. What would she choose? As the shadows pressed forward, Sarah's breath quickened, a darker fate looming with each passing second. Would they succumb to the despair that surrounded them, or would a hidden truth reveal itself in the depths of the night? The shadows writhed, clawing at the air like desperate hands reaching for salvation. Sarah felt the panic swallow her whole, her heart thumping so loudly she feared it would betray her. The room was alive with murmurs, a chaotic swirl of disembodied voices that merged into a haunting symphony. "We can't stay here!" Emma shrieked, her voice barely audible over the cacophony, but where to go? The door behind them had succumbed to the hands of darkness, splintering under their weight as the shadows converged. In that moment, they were trapped with whatever horrors lay within. Pushing her daughters behind her, Sarah searched the room for any means of escape. The flickering light overhead cast long, swaying shadows that danced across the room, making the figures seem to pulse with life. Each time the light dimmed, she felt the shadows press closer, as if they were tasting their fear, gaining strength from the girl's terror. "Look!" Lily pointed to a dusty window on the far wall. It was barely visible through the haze, grime clouding its surface. "Maybe we can get out that way." With renewed determination, Sarah beckoned her girls forward. They stumbled through the clutter, past broken furniture and old toys abandoned in a time lost. The whispers became clearer, more insistent. "Join us, we are all alone." Emma's grip tightened on Sarah's hand, her small body trembling. "Mom, hurry!" Scrambling toward the window, they reached it, but it was stuck, as if the very wood resisted their escape. Sarah pulled hard, her fingers slipping against the cold frame, but it wouldn't budge. Behind them, the shadows twisted, forming into shapes distorted reflections of her daughters, eyes hollow and filled with despair. "Let us go!" Sarah shouted, panic spilling over. She could feel the temperature dropping even more, their breath fogging the air. They were running out of time. With one last heave, she threw her weight against the window. It cracked open just enough for the relentless wind outside to rush in, carrying the scent of rain and earth, but it wouldn't be enough for the girls to fit through. "What do we do?" Emma's voice was small, breaking. "Climb up," Sarah urged, pushing Emma forward and gesturing for Lily to follow. The window glimmered with the promise of freedom but was accompanied by a hollow feeling in Sarah's gut. Would they make it? Could they really escape the grips of whatever had chased them? Before they could even process the fear, the shadows surged, a deep growl rising from their depths. "You will not leave us!" they cried, and Sarah felt the room tremble around them, furniture creaking as if in protest. "Climb!" Sarah commanded, shoving her daughters up. They scrambled, but the darkness was a living thing, each shadow becoming bolder, stretching and swirling around Sarah, sticky and cold. Lily let out a scream, startling Sarah back to the moment. A shadow tentacle shot for her, wrapping around her ankle, pulling her back toward the malice inching closer. She could feel its cold seep into her bones, panic blaring in her mind. "Mom!" Emma cried, turning back. "No. Go. Don't stop." Shoulders shoved, feet kicking desperately, the darkness was gaining. The window was their only salvation, its shape almost a portal beckoning her family to freedom. "I want to let them take you." Desperation clenched at Sarah's heart as she used every ounce of strength to tear herself free. The shadows howled in fury, retreating momentarily, giving her the chance. "Get through!" she ordered, her voice echoing with urgency as she propelled her daughters through the narrow opening. As soon as they made it, she felt a surge of relief wash over her, but it was short-lived. The shadows writhed behind, anger thickening the air, and the sound of anguished cries surrounded her. Gripping the edge of the window, she hesitated. Would she join them? Just as she prepared to follow, a piercing scream sliced through the darkness, a cry filled with malice, dragging her attention back into the room. "Sarah!" It was a voice she knew too well, laced with terror that chilled her blood. The shadows clawed at her now, rising like a storm, threatening to drag her back. She had a choice: but time was fleeting and the darkness was hungry. What awaited her on the other side? With her heart pounding, torn between duty to her daughters and the terror that beckoned her back, Sarah's world twisted once again. The room was full of horrors unfathomable, and something was about to break free from its bonds. Would she take the leap, or would the shadows devour her whole? The darkness swirled like a living entity, cold tendrils snaking up Sarah's legs as she prepared to leap. The anguished scream echoed in her ears, the voice hauntingly familiar. Her heart raced, torn between instinct and the love for her daughters. "Please come back." It was her own voice, twisted and echoed, as if the shadows mimicked her pleas. A sensation crawled up her spine, a primal instinct screaming to run, to escape this malignant presence. But there was love too, anchoring her, weighing her down. The window gaped wide, a beacon of hope against an endless void. Emma and Lily had made it out, but without her, they'd be lost in the storm of darkness that threatened to consume everything. "Hold on!" Sarah yelled, clinging to the edge as chilling fingers gripped her tighter. The shadows recoiled like a creature wounded, but they weren't finished yet. They pulled again, a violent lurch making her gasp as the world inside the room swirled. Staring into the darkness, she didn't see her home anymore. Instead, it was a realm of despair, filled with sighs and whispers that droned endlessly. "Join us, no." She gritted her teeth, tearing herself from the shadows clawing at her. She could not surrender. With her other hand, she pushed herself higher into the window's frame, the anguished cries of the shadows twisted into a cacophony, a symphony of fear that raked at her sanity. "Stay with us, it's safe here, come home, join us." It was hypnotic, pulling her deeper, wrapping tighter. Chunks of her very soul threatened to peel away and stick to the walls of that cursed place. She fought against their call, clawing her way to the top of the sill with renewed fury. "Mom!" The shriek pierced through the turmoil, a desperate glitter of hope that cut through the fog. Emma's terrified face appeared at the edge of the night. "Mom, please!" With one final effort, Sarah launched herself through the window, tumbling onto the ground outside just as the shadows surged behind her with a fury that shook the air. They slammed against the window frame with a thunderous crash, the sound echoing in the night like the growl of a beast denied its prey. But she was free. Pelleted by the rain and drenched in the scent of wet earth and grass, Sarah's lungs expanded with the feel of open air. "Get up. Let us go." She gasped, urgent and wild. Emma and Lily quickly pulled her to her feet, adrenaline coursing through them. They turned to see the window closing, the shadows retreating for just a moment, but she could still feel their rage. Then came the silence. An insidious stillness wrapped around them, broken only by the patter of rain. Instinctively, Sarah forced her daughters back, centering herself. Why was it so quiet? Where had the shadows gone? As they stumbled backward, a flicker of light caught her eye, an old lamp flickering back to life in the house. It gleamed dimly but unmistakably, illuminating the edges of a familiar face standing just inside. "Help me," the voice whispered, soft and sorrowful. "I can't escape, you have to let me in." Sarah's heart sank. It was her mother, lost to the whispers of the dark, a past she thought she had left behind. The shadows merged, slithering around her mother's feet, beckoning her, promising safety and comfort. "Mom!" Sarah's voice trembled, caught between relief and horror, but before she could even step forward, a loud groan erupted from the house. Brick and mortar trembled as the foundation of the old structure heaved. The shadows within swirled violently, once again raising a deafening chorus. The window bellowed with rage. "Leave her!" Sarah shouted, grounding herself. Yet the temptation lurked. Could she and should she reach out to the one who had loved her despite everything? With a shaky breath, pieces of her own past tugged at her. The rain beat down furiously as her mother's figure blurred, the shadows enveloping her, threatening to close in once more. "Sarah! We have to go." Emma pulled at her frantically, her voice cutting the air thick with dread. Fighting the urge to remain, Sarah turned her back on the past and ran into the night, the weight of her choices clawing at her. Behind them, the house screamed anew, shadows billowing like smoke, licking the sky as they were denied their prize. What horrors still lay within, and what of her mother's fate? The night was alive with secrets whispering just beyond their reach, waiting for the moment to devour them whole. Eyes wide, darkness still hovering in the periphery, Sarah sprinted into the storm, the haunting whispers echoing behind them, relentless and unresolved. Was this escape, or simply the beginning of a new nightmare? Rain pounded against the trio as they stumbled through the night. The shadows that had once seemed so distant now hovered just behind them, a pulsating mass of fear and regret. Sarah glanced over her shoulder, her breath catching in her throat. The house loomed as a dark silhouette, angry and hungry, looking for its prey. "Keep going," Emma urged, her voice trembling. The fear on her face mirrored Sarah's own. Lily clutched her sister's hand tightly, eyes wide with terror. They pushed deeper into the woods, branches snatching at their clothes and hair, the cold biting into their skin. Every rustle in the underbrush felt ominous, every flicker of light through the trees a warning. She felt unsteady, like the earth beneath her feet was just as unsettled as her mind. What if they come after us?" Lily asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sarah hushed her, glancing back nervously. "We just need to put some distance between us and that whatever it is." They kept running, and then the shadows came for them. A voice, just behind, low and demanding. "Sarah, come back, stop. Go, now." Sarah shouted, pushing the girls onward as dread gripped her heart in a vice. The cold air thickened around them, and as if in response to their fear, the darkness closed in tighter, making it hard to see the path ahead. Panic morphed into raw urgency. They stumbled into a clearing, illuminated by a faint glow. Gathering their strength, they paused, hoping for a moment's reprieve. "What is that?" Emma's eyes widened, pointing to an old signpost half buried in the underbrush, creaking ominously as the wind picked up. The sign barely could be read, "Welcome to Deadwood Hollow." "Great, just great," Sarah muttered, looking at the girls. "We're lost in a cursed place." With no other choice, they moved toward the light. It flickered between the trees, calling like a siren in the night. Each step felt tentative, as if the ground might open up and swallow them whole. Yet the light solidified in front of them, a ramshackle cabin, nearly identical to the house they'd fled. "Do we hide?" Lily whispered, her small voice almost drowned out by the cacophony of the storm. Maybe we can find help in there," Sarah said, though uncertainty gnawed at her gut. She reluctantly stepped forward and the door creaked open, a welcoming but unnerving sight. Inside, the light flickered to life, revealing peeling wallpaper and dusty furniture, as if someone had just left. The air was thick with a stale smell, but there was no time to consider that. "Look for something we can use, anything." Emma and Lily moved cautiously, eyes darting around, absorbing the eerie atmosphere. An old radio sputtered to life on a table beside them, an old-timey tune crackling through the air in stark contrast to the storm raging outside. Then came a voice, distorted but familiar. "Help me," Sarah's heart dropped. "That's my mother. Mom's dead." Emma snapped. "She's gone." "It's a trick." "Is it?" Sarah felt torn, each heartbeat striking against her resolve. What if she's lost too? What if this is part of whatever is hunting us? A loud crash erupted from outside. The shadows had poured into the clearing, dark spirals swirling with an echo of the whispers, overwhelming and sinister. They were coming. "Sarah!" Lily cried, wide-eyed and trembling. "Run!" Sarah shouted, grabbing both girls by the arms as they barreled deeper into the cabin. The walls seemed to close in, the flickering light casting monstrous shadows that danced around them. The screams of the shadows leaked through the cracks, pulling at their sanity as their whispers turned into wails. As they reached the back of the cabin, Sarah's foot hit something solid, a trapdoor. Heart racing, she yanked it open. In. Now. They jumped into the darkness below, the shadows clawing at their heels, desperate to reclaim what they had lost. The door slammed shut above them, sealing in the silence. Cold air rushed around them, heavy and damp, wrapping around their bodies like a shroud. A soft glow illuminated the dark space, revealing old photographs lining the walls. Faces stared out at them, familiar and yet twisted ghostly reflections of loved ones long gone. Time drifted in this suffocating pit, and as they huddled together, the whispers returned softer this time, intimate, as if they knew each of them by name. "Join us." A chill surged through Sarah, and she looked at her daughters, both wide-eyed and breathless, waiting for her to say something, anything, to break the grip of the shadows surrounding them. Just beyond reach, another voice called. The door it opens differently. Frozen in a moment of dread, Sarah realized they might have just exchanged one nightmare for another. But what awaited them in the dark was beyond comprehension, and she had no idea whether they could survive what lay ahead. What did that voice mean when it whispered, "opens differently"? And what would happen if they couldn't find a way out? The darkness felt suffocating, a thick fog swirling around them. As Sarah huddled with Emma and Lily in that cramped underground space, she allowed herself a moment of clarity. This was not her mother's voice, it couldn't be. The shadows stretched and twisted in her mind, playing tricks, weighing her down. "Don't listen to them," she whispered fiercely, clutching her daughters tighter, "they want to tear us apart. We stay together always." A quiet moment wrapped around them as they listened to the whispers curling through the corners of the dimly lit room. "Join us, help us." The familiar tugging on her heart was hard to resist, but Sarah couldn't give in. The figures from her past had haunted her long enough. It was time to break free. "Let us clear a path," she said suddenly, her voice steady with determination. "We need to find that door." The flickering light illuminated their faces, revealing fear mingled with hope. Emma nodded, drawing strength from her mother's resolve, while Lily squeezed her sister's hand tighter. Sarah led the way, purposely stepping toward the photos that lined the walls. Each face anchored her, reminding her of the loved ones she truly cherished. "They're not our family," she urged, "they're just echoes. Shadows waiting to pull us into their darkness." As they moved deeper into the twisting shadows, the whispers grew frantic, echoing their names, spilling secrets that felt familiar yet terrifying. The air around them surged colder, pressing against their skin a warning of what was to come. But despite the mounting pressure, Sarah felt the remnants of her determination hardening into a shield against the encroaching shadows. "Mom!" Emma gasped, breaking through the tension. "Over there." She pointed to a wretched, rusted handle protruding from the darkness. It was the trapdoor that led to their only hope. "That must be it." They gasped in unison, their hearts surging with adrenaline. As Sarah reached for the handle, the whispers erupted into frenzied chaos, drowning out their thoughts. "Stay with us. We need you." A chorus of voices encircled them, suffocating hope with despair. "No!" Sarah shouted, ripping the handle down with all her strength. "We're leaving." The trapdoor creaked open with a groan, shadows reaching out like clawed hands, desperate to snatch them back into the depths they had tried to escape. "No, no, no." Sarah pressed onward, lifting an arm to shield her daughters. "Go. Get through, I'll hold them back." Emma's eyes glimmered with fear, but the urgency in her mother's voice steeled her resolve. "Mom, no!" she cried, but in a whirlwind of instincts, Sarah screamed, "Now!" Lily rushed through the trapdoor first as Sarah pushed Emma after her. Once they were safe, it was her turn. She hesitated, casting one last glance back at the haunting figures cloaked in sorrow. Each distorted face was a reminder of her vulnerabilities, but unwavering strength surged through her veins. She leapt through the opening, the shadows clawing at her heels, howling in fury as the trapdoor slammed shut with the sound of finality. The air was different here. Thin yet fresh, filled with the smell of loamy earth and wildflowers, a stark contrast to the moldering shadows they had left behind. They tumbled down to a grassy knoll beneath a gray sky, the weight of terror finally lifting. Sarah hugged her daughters tightly, trembling as the adrenaline surged through her like lightning. "We did it. We're free," she managed to exclaim before collapsing sobbing into their small frames. tears of relief broke through the heavy bands of despair as the wailing shadows drifted further away. In their wake, the dark power that had loomed over them diminished until it was but an echo of a memory, fading into a whisper on the wind. They looked out across the vast expanse of the woods that surrounded them, a blanket of green swaying gently with the breeze. No traps, no luring voices, just freedom. "Where do we go now?" Emma asked, her voice quiet and fragile. "We'll figure it out, together." Sarah replied with a gentleness that flowed from a well of newfound strength. "As long as we have each other, we'll be all right." The shadows may have haunted their past, but the future stretched ahead as a canvas of possibility. Sarah smiled through her tears, wrapping her arms around her daughters. As they took their first steps away from the house which no longer felt like a home, the winds whispered behind them, mere reminders of truths long buried. The struggle had changed them, bonded them in ways only they could understand. Hand in hand, they walked toward whatever dawn awaited them, fully aware that they had each other, and that was everything. And speaking of everything, listen up. You need to subscribe now if you don't want to miss what's coming next. Smash that like button, it really helps me out, and trust me, you don't want to miss these exclusive stories. Flood the comments below with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And if you have friends who need to see this conclusion, don't wait even one more second to share this video. Let us build this community together. Your support means everything.